So I just got out of seeing Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and at this point in the MCU, saying that it was the best Marvel movie since the last one that came out 6 months ago is all too common. We see it all the time over on social media. So instead, what I will say is that Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is their most competent and director-driven film in a very long while. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which from now on I'll just be referring to as Doctor Strange 2 since that title is quite a mouthful, hits the ground running, quite literally, as veteran horror director and Spider-Man 1-3 director Sam Raimi spares no time in getting into the action of it all as he introduces us quickly to America Chavez and an alternate Earth's Doctor Strange, who is trying to help Chavez escape monsters who want her powers, which are, as we learn, that she can literally kick her way into other multiverses. These abilities land her on Earth 616, the MCU, where she runs into the MCU's Doctor Strange and Wong after Strange quickly leaves Christine Palmer's wedding to deal with a monster. The monster we find out is hunting America across these multiverses. Upon defeating the monster, Strange figures out that it is witchcraft that is at work here, and he knows the one person who can help him, Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, who, since we last saw her at the end of WandaVision, has had the Darkhold take hold of her and corrupt her mind into believing that it can give her what she misses dearly. Her two children, who in the MCU never actually existed, and they're all created by her, as seen in the events of WandaVision. The Darkhold has promised that if she travels into the multiverse, she can find a reality where her kids are real and she can take over that Wanda's body and become their mother again and have her kids back. And it's here we learn that these monsters that are all being sent after America are from Wanda. Stephen quickly dedicates his life and power to prevent the Scarlet Witch from getting America Chavez, even if it means he must tap into the same dark energy that she is using to stop the Scarlet Witch. So that's a pretty quick rundown of the overall plot of the movie, but there is just so much more happening, and this movie really packs it all into just over a 2-hour runtime, which is the biggest surprise here, since I figured, being it a multiverse film, the first film we've really experienced the multiverse in, since we never really got to explore it in No Way Home and explored it a little bit in Loki, I would have thought it would have been a little bit longer, but it's not. And while this is a Marvel Studios production, it is 100% a Sam Raimi film. He is not watered down at all in any way, something a lot of previous Marvel movies have done with directors who really just kind of come in and their director role is just really to just be the face of the production. You know, they got this guy to direct these films. Since the movie is pretty much already planned out to begin with, thanks to all the interconnected stories that these movies have. But here it feels like Sam, even down to the jokes, which thankfully aren't Marvel quips, thank God, in this film, are his jokes. They're jokes that you would see in his Evil Dead films or in his Spider-Man films. The movie is so much more better for it, just because I can what if it, I can use Owatu's vision of seeing what if some other director had taken this film, any other director besides Sam Raimi, and I can see where certain parts would have been the Marvel Studios sterile feel, where they just feel like they're ticking off boxes on a list to get to that $1 billion box office. Thanks to Sam at the helm, the movie is 100% a magical horror film with all the hallmarks of his classic horror films on display here, utilized in some really awesome and creative ways that help propel the story forward. I can see that being something maybe some people don't like, since the movie has very few moments where it slows down and just kind of takes a beat and takes inventory of what has happened so far. But it needs that breakneck speed just because the plot demands it, being that Wanda in this film is basically a slasher movie monster. She's Jason Voorhees, she's Michael Myers, she's Freddy Krueger in some parts, just relentlessly hunting Steven and America across the multiverse, and they just can't stop and can't have a breather or a moment to take inventory of everything. Raimi, pulling from his horror roots and even horror in popular culture like Silent Hill and The Ring, was such a boon for this film, and it's really the biggest reason I love it so much. I really love horror, and there's just so much of it in this. There's jump scares, there's creepy monsters, there's terrifying musical cues, and a great creative use of where the score actually becomes a weapon in the film, which I thought was really quite cool. Another thing is that because this is Sam Raimi, you get horror and horror camp, and I love his horror camp. I love his Evil Dead films. They are really funny, really scary. Here you hire someone who is the king of camp horror. So I loved all the sped up POV shots, and there's some really great handheld stuff, like when the evil Wanda is hunting one of her doppelgangers and it's like hiding behind the stairs, or like when Wanda gets attacked by a bunch of demons, you get the POV from the demons just swooping in down on her, and it looks really fantastic and really so different from what I would have assumed this film would have been had it been through someone else. As I said before, it could have been easily just a very sterile, magical action film. But with him at the helm, it's just so damn cool, and it fits Strange and his world so damn well as well, because it's all weird magical stuff, and it makes me wonder why it wasn't happening earlier. A big part of Steven and Wanda's story and the through line of the film really is kind of what if, as in what if things were different or they did something different in their lives. In Wanda's case, it's related to her children and making them real and actually having children and a family. But for Steven, it's kind of a number of things, the chief one being his failed relationship with Christine Palmer, which gets explored quite a fair bit throughout this film. Same with how he aided in beating Thanos and how his choice was the only choice, and him dealing with the fact that maybe it wasn't. And I like the part where he's sort of taken in and given the gravity of this situation of what he had to choose when he meets with one of his old friends, and we learn that his brother died because of what happened with like the blip and everything, and Steven's kind of broken up about it, and because it's really personal to him, and I quite enjoyed them exploring that throughout the film. Sam Raimi and Michael Waldron really make a meal out of all of this, and using the multiverse is the perfect tool and vessel to explore all these themes. And we're given a few what-ifs for our characters as we go to other multiverses. It's a story about being okay with who you are, and maybe the mistakes that we've made in life don't really make up our lives, and we can move past them, and it's okay to make mistakes because everyone does. Even Sorcerer Supremes and the Scarlet Witch, they all make mistakes. It wouldn't be a Marvel movie without any fan service, and there is absolutely fan service, and I think it's probably the right amount. Some have hyped this film up to some unattainable expectations, with literally everyone from the Marvel Cinematic Universe and beyond appearing in this film in some way or another. That's not the case here at all, and those people will probably be disappointed in it. What's even better is that all of the fan service kind of comes together in one scene, and one scene only. And the scene I'm talking about is the Illuminati scene, the Illuminati of Earth 838, which has been teased in a couple of the trailers here and there. And we find these people are judging Steven as he arrives on their world because they see him as more of a threat than Wanda. The team consists of Baron Mordo, who we've seen all in trailers and everything, Captain Carter, Monica Rambeau's Captain Marvel, Professor Xavier, played by Patrick Stewart, Black Bolt, again played by Anson Mount, and Mr. Fantastic. It was a lot of fun seeing these characters, some for the first time in the big screen, and we got some really fantastic castings like Anson Mount returning, which I never thought in a million years he would. He was the best part of that Inhumans TV show, and here he is the best part of that scene for me as well. And we also got the biggest casting, which is John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic, who is probably fan casted before the sun even turned yellow. Everyone wanted him casted as this role, and he got it. And I imagine he'll play the MCU version of the character as well sometime later down the line. They were all great in the little scenes they got with them, and it led to probably the most brutal and gruesome set of kills in the film. And throughout the film, Wanda is a slasher movie monster, so it means that she gets to kill with a little bit more creativity and a bit more violence, and she absolutely does, and no one is spared from her wrath. And we get some pretty brutal stuff like people immolating themselves thanks to her, or in the case of Black Bolt, his brain melts thanks to him being able to shout into his own head, and it just blows up his brain and leaks out of his nose and ears and everything. It's great, and Mr. Fantastic gets turned into spaghetti and his head blows up. It's brutal, it's really brutal, and I was honestly shocked at the brutality of it, since Marvel's films, they have violence, but it's usually pretty stock standard action movie violence, you know, someone gets thrown across the room and hits a wall really hard and there's like a crack sound, or maybe someone is shot off screen or something, you know, someone's bleeding or something, very stock standard stuff. But here the violence was just really over the top, and I really quite enjoyed seeing all of that, since it helped raise the stakes a little bit and it added to that urgency of the plot of having to keep things moving as well. In terms of casting, Elizabeth Olsen was the standout for me. She really made a meal of every scene she is in. She's just going for it, and I loved that she's the perfect amount of unhinged monster, yet sympathetic being, where if you followed her story all the way from Age of Ultron and the Avengers and Civil War and WandaVision, everything, all it really boils down to, like, her story is that she just wants to love someone, you know, give her love to someone and be loved back. So there's a tragedy to the character when she can't get that, and of course she kind of goes about the wrong way of getting it, and Olsen just brings it out so well in the character, and I loved every minute she was on screen. She's fantastic. Benedict Cumberbatch was great as Strange again, and I really love the little arc he's been getting throughout the last couple of Avengers films and No Way Home, where he's kind of softening up a little bit to the world of superheroes, and people like, obviously, like Peter had a big effect on him, and I like now that he's got America Chavez as like a sidekick sort of thing, he's softening and kind of being a less arrogant ass, and realizing that while he is all powerful and he has quite a bit of power, he's definitely not the most powerful being in the universe, let alone the multiverse, which again is something that they use really well to kind of humble him in a way and make him realize like, it could be a lot worse for me, and I quite enjoyed that. I do wish the variant Stevens we saw were a little different to each other than what they were, since it really felt like Benedict was just playing the same character, just in slightly different costumes. The evil guy we see in the trailer, who many think is the Supreme Strange, but it's not. It's a variant of the Supreme Strange. He's probably the most different, but again, it's just Benedict in slightly different costume playing that same role, and I kind of wish there was a little bit of a difference. Like, I would have liked one if it was voiced how Benedict actually speaks with a British accent, or, you know, something like that, just to sort of play it up a little bit. Newcomer Xochitl Gomez was alright as America Chavez, but I do wish there was a little bit more substance to her character, since she is really just used as a plot device and MacGuffin in the end, basically. We do get brief moments of her past and her origin with her mothers on their world, and how she is the only America Chavez in the entire multiverse, and it's why she doesn't dream and all that sort of stuff. That was really great, but if the movie did have slower beats and beats where inventory could be taken, those moments could be filled with a bit more of her character, but because the movie doesn't have them, we don't really get that. She is sticking around in the MCU, so I'm looking forward to where she appears next, and she was a great bit of youthful energy whenever she was on screen, especially when interacting with Steven. I thought their sort of banter and back and forth with them coming to trust one another was quite cool, but just wish there was a little bit more there for her character. Rachel McAdams actually gets something to do this time around, which was a lot of fun. I liked her actually using magic and magical items and stuff, which was a lot of fun. And I did like that her role was to help Steven find some sort of closure between both of them, and they both come to sort of the agreement that they love each other, but they're not going to be together because they have other obligations and everything, and they kind of come to an understanding, which was really cool. Danny Elfman returned to the MCU to score the film, and I quite enjoyed his score. I do miss Michael Giacchino's score, and it's used sporadically throughout this, but I did like what Danny Elfman did here with various themes and like changing up themes to represent the different strangers, like taking notes out, replacing them with other ones. There's a great fight scene, and I hinted about this a little earlier, where the music itself, the score itself, is used as a weapon, and and I thought it was thoroughly enjoyable seeing that in action. On top of that, we actually get a return of some MCU themes like the Captain America theme and stuff like that, as well as a really cool riff on the X-Men animated series theme, which was so cool to hear, backed by like a big score and everything. It makes me want to actually hope that that actually gets put on the soundtrack, since it sounded amazing, and I hope we get to hear it again. Doctor Strange 2 was the first Marvel movie in a long time that I actually felt like it came from the person who directed it. It's filled with fantastic horror elements, fun, creative action sequences, and a great through-line story for our characters that, if the ending is anything to go by, it's going to be explored a lot more and be built upon to a probable big event, which I don't want to spoil, but definitely start looking into Hickman's Avengers run, if you know what I mean. You know, there's some stuff in that run that this movie directly references, which is really exciting as a comic reader to see all of this on screen. Thanks to it going so hard into Raimi's style, it breaks the usual Marvel Studios movie mold, and I guarantee you some fans won't like that, since it doesn't tick all the boxes for the fan service and actually does character work in favor of member berries. And as a fan of Raimi, horror films, and exploring the multiverse, I had an absolute blast. I'm going to give Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness an 8.5 out of 10.